This stone relief from the Han Dynasty depicts a famous scene: the Duke of Zhou watching over the young King Shang. While the young king is the central figure, it is the Duke who has always been revered in China because of his benevolent regency during the early years of his nephew's reign. The Duke led the newly established Zhou dynasty from crisis to prosperity. He was Dun Ji, younger brother of King Wu of Zhou. The Duke of Zhou is remembered not only as a statesman, but as a kind of patron saint of Chinese civilization. He originated the concept of ruling a kingdom by virtue, and he founded the system of ceremonial rites. For Confucius, he was the great example. Although he served as regent for only 7 years, this short period secured both the Western Zhou dynasty and the long-term future of Chinese civilization. To this day, worshippers gather at his temple to revere him as a sage. In 1046 BC, King Wu of Zhou led an army to topple the Shang dynasty. With his own army unable to return in time from the east, Di Xin, the king of Shang, sent 100,000 slaves and prisoners of war to fight for him at the Battle of Muye. Many of them defected or refused to fight. King Wu soon took the Shang capital, Zhaoge, and Di Xin committed suicide. The Shang dynasty, which had ruled for 600 years, was over. King Wu knew that the foundations of Shang power remained. So before leaving Zhaoge, he tried to stabilize the situation by installing Di Xin's son, Wu Gang, as a vassal ruler. But King Wu did not trust Wu Gang. So to guarantee Zhou rule, he gave his 3 younger brothers, Guan, Cai, and Huo, fiefdoms in the former Shang territories. They are known as the 3 guards. But this strategy proved to be no guarantee at all. Back in his own capital, Haojing, King Wu was haunted by the problem of the territory he had taken over from the Shang. Had the supporters of the old dynasty really surrendered? How could he rule these vast lands that he did not really control? He had no good answers. The Zhou dynasty was itself full of crises. Only 2 years after the Battle of Muye, King Wu collapsed, seriously ill.
周经常自称小邦周，所以他克了这个大义商，很有危机感的，认为自己的统治啊能否持久稳固，他还是没有那么很强的信心。
他夜不能寐，就是他晚上睡不着觉。他主要想的其中有一个问题就是，怎么处置商移民的问题啊？商人当时是以族来做单位，打的家族还存在啊，那个反抗力、军事力量很强。 所以周人很担心能不能保住这个天下。
With the king confined by illness, his younger brother, the Duke of Zhou, prayed to their royal ancestors with an offer. If only King Wu could recover, he would give up his own life. The Duke placed a copy of the prayer in a metal casket and swore his followers to secrecy. It was believed that such a prayer was sure to be answered. In other words, the Duke of Zhou was planning his own death. King Wu had many brothers, but in virtue and talent, the Duke of Zhou stood out from the rest. He was the king's most trusted advisor. After the destruction of the Shang dynasty, he too had received a fiefdom to govern, but King Wu kept this loyal brother close to his side. Soon, the ailing king was dead, and the crown passed to his son, Prince Song, who ascended the throne as King Chang of Zhou. The Duke of Zhou became his regent and the effective ruler of the kingdom. King Wu had in fact considered making the Duke king in his place, thinking him the only one capable of saving the situation. But the Duke had declined. Happy to act as regent, he supported the accession of the Crown Prince.
周公他执政在很多地方是不得已。那时候我想武王已经很清楚了，只有他才能够继承王位。但是他也知道，如果他继承王位，这个整个局势有很大的变化，而且他也不一定完全能控制，所以他一定只能够摄政。
The Duke of Zhou accepted the role of regent because he aimed to stabilize and unify the kingdom, and to ensure the smooth transfer of power to the young king. Wise as this arrangement seemed, it ran into deep opposition. The news of the Duke's elevation to the regency spread to the east, angering Wu's brothers, Cai and Guan. Urged on by Wu Gang, son of the last king of Shang, they spread rumors to undermine the Duke. Meanwhile, another younger brother of King Wu, the Duke of Shao, had trusted the Duke of Zhou more than anyone else. He and the Duke had been at King Wu's right hand together. Now, even he began to doubt the regent. It was vital that the Duke of Zhou should retain the loyalty of the Duke of Shao. The Duke of Zhou's predicament provides a famous episode in this shadow play at Xishan in Shanxi province. The lyrics are based on what the Duke of Zhou said to his brother, as recorded in the classic of history. In a scene reflecting the high drama of this time of emergency, the Duke of Zhou analyzes the situation, explaining to his brother why he accepted the regency. He points out that the only way they can build upon the foundations laid by their father, King Wen, is by working together as brothers to assist the young ruler. The Duke of Shao is finally convinced. But tensions remained in the royal family, with the young King Cheng still mistrusting his uncle. In an attempt to clear the air, the Duke left the capital and retired to the east. Meanwhile, in their provinces, the three guards continued their subversive activities, even joining forces with Shang loyalists, including Wu Gang. They began an open rebellion, and dozens of other states, including Shu, Yan, and Huai, joined in. An uprising began throughout the territories formerly connected with the Shang, and then swept westward. The Zhou dynasty, established for a little over 3 years, faced a terrible crisis. With Zhou confronted by formidable enemies, the Duke of Zhou was deeply concerned. But to do anything, he first had to gain King Cheng's complete trust. So he wrote him a poem, Che Xiao, or The True Owl, demonstrating his concern at the looming threat to the royal family. Beginning, "You have taken my children, do not shatter my home," it convinced the Duke's younger brother and others at court of the importance of the regency. They urged the Duke to return and take control. King Cheng, however, was still not convinced. Events now took a different turn. Natural disasters followed upon man-made ones. In autumn, before the usually rich grain harvest, huge storms lashed the country. The maturing rice was flattened and ancient trees uprooted. The people of Zhou were terrified. As was customary, King Cheng prepared to hold a divination ceremony to obtain a sign from heaven. Now he learned of how his uncle had prayed for the late king and been willing to sacrifice his own life. Opening the golden casket to read the vow, he realized the Duke's sincerity. Weeping, he said, "The Duke of Zhou is dedicated to the royal family. I am an ignorant child. Now heaven has worked its power to show the Duke's virtues. I will personally summon him to return and go and meet him." According to legend, when King Cheng approached the city outskirts to meet his uncle, rain began to fall, the wind blew back in the opposite direction, and the rice grasses stood up again. It is a fanciful anecdote, But the fact remains that King Cheng did finally decide to face this first great dynastic crisis with the Duke of Zhou at his side.
我们不管这个金藤的这个事情的出现是真还假，至少我们想象它有这样一个可能吗？所以这样说来，周公的初心，就最初的他那个心，他是一个纯正的，要为了周朝的命脉来发挥他的积极力量，这个是完全是公的，不是为了个人的利益。
因为成王呢，毕竟呢年龄太小，所以呢，大政方针一切举措都是在周公的亲自这个操盘下操心下呢进行的，包括东征。
Wang Zhouhua, in his 70s, is an heir to the tradition of Qishan drum performance. After the autumn harvest, the villagers play drums under the leadership of masters like him. Qishan drumming is the most colourful and characteristic part of Shanxi drum and gong performance. It is called running the drums because the performers constantly change their positions, alternating drumming with dance movements. Qishan was the original capital of the Zhou dynasty, and the history of its drumming goes back to that time. The drum was used in sacrifices and for entertainment, and also on the battlefield to encourage soldiers to charge. In 1043 BC, having reassumed the regency, the Duke of Zhou decided to lead an expedition to the east. It took 3 years of hard fighting with huge losses in manpower and resources, but the rebellion was finally quashed. Wu Gang and Guan were killed. The less guilty Cai was exiled. The Duke of Zhou continued eastward, subduing more than 50 states, including Yan, and extending the dynasty's power to the coast. The Zhou dynasty had restored and enhanced its glory, but while the court celebrated, the Duke of Zhou could not enjoy the taste of victory. It was clear to him that danger remained. The Shang loyalists still had the advantage of numbers. They were still there with the same governmental structures. Who could guarantee that no more ambitious leaders would emerge? And if the states close to the former dynasty could not be kept under control, they would pose a huge threat. The rebellion of the three guards had exposed the dangers lurking for Zhou. The old system had proved itself unworkable. To ensure its long-term survival, the new dynasty needed a more effective system to govern the East.
一个小邦州突然成了天下共主，他拥有的土地很大，那他怎么进行那个统治和管理？他采取的办法是分封制，就派出自己的代表吧，就到各地去建立诸侯国，统一那个一小片地方。但是这种分封制本身就解决了他一个小邦可以迅速的统治一个广大地区的一个手段。
Qufu in Shandong province is the birthplace of Confucius. It also has a special connection with the Duke of Zhou. It hosts a temple to him that is just as famous as his temple in Qishan. The Qufu temple was built because, after the Duke's final victory in the east, King Cheng sent the Duke's eldest son, Bo Qin, to rule Qufu as the feudal lord of Lu. It was also a region with a significant number of Shang loyalists. The problem King Wu had faced of how to control a vast population of Shang sympathizers was even more critical after the Duke of Zhou's conquest of the eastern states. The Duke attempted to dilute and control the Shang population through a policy of immigration from Zhou. This policy made the feudal system implemented by the Duke of Zhou very different from what had come before. The Liuli River area in the Fangshan district of southwest Beijing is part of the Western Zhou-Yang State Capital Museum. Since 1973, archaeologists have discovered a large number of tombs, residential structures and walls dating from the time of the Western Zhou dynasty. In 1986, they found a large tomb, M1193, from the dynasty's early years. Although it had been robbed, it still held 2 bronze items with matching inscriptions. They record that King Cheng of Zhou appointed Ke, the eldest son of the Duke of Zhou, as the feudal lord of Yan, confirming that this is where the state of Yan was formally enfiefed to the Zhou dynasty.
这是克和的铭文，一共43个字，大概的意思是：太保，你用盟誓和清酒来供奉你的君王，我非常满意你的供享，命克做燕地的君侯。
Under the new system, each enfiefed state was a military stronghold, governed in the dynasty's name by a member of the Zhou royal family. The state of Yan was assigned to Ke, eldest son of the Duke of Zhou, bearing the family name Ji, as a buffer against the northern tribes. The state of Jin, a second buffer against the northern tribes and a means of access to Haojing and the eastern capital of Wuyi, was enfiefed to King Cheng's younger brother, Tang Shuyu. The state of Wei was entrusted to the Duke of Zhou's most capable brother, Kang. He was to rule the 7 tribes of Yin from the former Shang capital, Zhaoge, strengthening Zhou rule in what had been the Shang heartland. The state of Qi went to King Wen's old advisor, Zhang Ceya, to strengthen Zhou control over the eastern tribes and support the state of Lu.
在《左传》上，都有记载的啊，就是封赐把谁，作为侯派到哪儿去啊，王要参加，而且有很多礼遇活动，要赏赐很多东西啊，甚至要有册命啊，这个是很隆重的一件事情啊。那么，周人的这种封建的主要的目的啊，这个在文献上有很明确的记载，就是要建立这个来拱卫周王朝的平藩啊，就是这个屏障一样啊，让他们在一些边远地区设立，防止这个周边的这种彝族对周王朝的进袭啊侵犯。而且呢，还有一个往往会告诉你在哪个地方做封建封在哪个地方，然后你可以用这个地方为基点往扩张。这儿就是等于使周王国的领土不断得到伸展。
The temple of Weizhe, reputed as a great sage, Weizhe was a brother of the last king of the Shang. He repeatedly advised the king to cease his atrocities, but his advice was ignored, and to save himself, he went into hiding. Later, the Weizhe tomb was built in his memory not far from his temple. The Zhou dynasty recognized his nobility of character, and it was also revered by the Shang. The Duke of Zhou enfiefed the state of Song to Weizhe, who was able to ensure that the Shang maintained their ancestor worship and their original customs. This astute tactic enabled the Duke to neutralize and control opposition from Shang loyalists.
为啥封在宋国？因为宋国呢，这是殷商的聚居地，也就是说这是它的根据地。这方面的移民有很可能再发生暴乱，怎么办呢？为了安定团结，周公就把魏子德高望重魏子请过来，让他来统治殷商夷。 所以把它封在了宋国，就是现在的上京。
But the appointment of Weizhe was hardly typical of the Duke of Zhou's enfiefment strategy. He appointed primarily members of the royal family bearing the family name Ji and their in-laws. Through the enfiefment of relatives, he established an effective system of rule in the vast new territories. Under this system, there were 71 states, 53 of them enfiefed to members of the Ji family. The most important were the states of Lu, Wei, Song, Jin, Qi, and Yan.
大量的殷人被迁到了这个宗周、镐京附近，然后就是把他们直接处于周王室的控制之下。 还有一部分殷人被他分封诸侯，分给了魏国、鲁国，包括是不是还有晋国，他们都是分了一些殷商的旧族，也就是一个是把他们打散，迁离就地，把他们在新的地方给他们安置下来，控制起来，直接监视。第一个方面就允许他们做官，他们的社会地位并不低，还可以在周王室做官，充分发挥他们这个文化方面的优越性。
To consolidate the dynasty's cohesion by strengthening blood relationships, the Duke of Zhou also adopted the patriarchal clan system. This meant that within the same clan, the eldest son led the major clan, while the rest of the sons led the minor clans. A hierarchy of subordination between the major and minor clans could be extended and divided again and again, forming long sequences. In Luoyang, in Henan province, research on the Zhou family genealogy is underway. These people come from all over China, bearing their family genealogies. They do not know each other and have never even met. They can and will, however, connect through family descent. According to their genealogies, they are all descendants of the Duke of Zhou. In fact, every Chinese person can potentially trace his or her own family back to its clan origins. Across 3,000 years, through wars, migrations, and transformations in the landscape, a genealogy can bring together people with the same family name and origin. Such is the power of the patriarchal clan system as it was established by the Duke of Zhou.
我们把树根啊叫本嘛，根就是本。这个本，然后上面很多树枝，啊，这个原来的设想就是这个大宗的这个本，啊，然后生出来好多枝，就本和枝，啊，它生出来鲁国、齐国什么，这样传下去，本枝、树枝啊，枝杈、百世，一代一代这样下去。
Under the patriarchal clan system, the King of Zhou represented the one and only major clan, with the feudal lords of the states heading its minor clans. But in the states, the feudal lord was the major clan, and he, in turn, could enfeoff his children as minor clans. These children could in turn be divided into major and minor clans, with the eldest son of each minor clan being the patriarch. These relationships of subordination existed not only between family members, but also at the political level, between the king and his subjects. The close combination of clan power and royal power established an orderly and stable patriarchy, with a tightly knit royal family at the apex.
这个时候呢，家天下开始了，所以对今天讲起来，这个已经过时了。我们不是家天下。 家天下呢，这样子他就特别注重这个宗法制度，长子继承，有大宗小宗呢，造成一个等于一棵大树吧。那么这为了什么呢？就为了稳定当时的政权，因为权力的转移，这是最难也最重要的大事。我们一般的理解是权力是会腐化的，绝对的权威绝对腐化。如果权力的转移，如果是兄终弟及，兄终弟及的那个观念里面呢？ 就有好几个同时要来争取王位的力量。
The Zhou dynasty also saw the implementation of the principle of no marriage between people with the same family name. Members of the Zhou royal family and all the nobility had to marry members of different clans from the feudal states. Of the queens of Zhou whose names were engraved on bronze vessels, almost all were members of only two families, Zhang and Ji, indicating that the Zhou royal family intermarried for generations with clans from these states. Through marriage and the uncle-nephew relationship, aristocrats with different family names were also included in the patriarchal clan system. Through feudal relationships, the Zhou kingdom and the family unit were part of the same structure, like a vast interconnected family sharing the same blood, the same destiny. The Zhou capital, Haojing, was also described on bronzeware in letters of gold as Zhong Zhou or ancestral Zhou.
周朝建立没多久，商朝的势力还没有这个消亡的时候，这个斗争是不可避免。所以在这个不太合理的情况下，应该是选贤与能呢，所以应该是最有能力的人才能够舜尧舜禹，这种才是真正的儒家最高的价值。你到了一定要用长子继承，这是一个权宜之计。但是从权宜之计来讲，这个做法使得周朝能够维系那么长的时间，这是一个稳定的因素。稳定的因素主要的目的不是为了这个政权的安定，是为了极大多数老百姓的幸福。这一点他是做到了。
The enfeoffment and patriarchal clan systems complemented each other as a means of political control. The Zhou succeeded in establishing a powerful kingdom over a vast territory. The small, minor dynasty had come a long way. All land beneath heaven is the king's. All people living on it are his subjects. The rule of the Western Zhou extended far and wide. The dynasty went on with its vast restructuring. Despite their being dispersed through immigration and other means, Shang loyalists remained a major concern. It seemed obvious to the Duke that the Zhou capital, Haojing, was located too far to the west. He decided to build another capital in the center of the kingdom in order to resettle and control the adherents of the Shang dynasty and to manage the other states. After much divination and research, the Duke finally chose a site on the north bank of the Luoshui River. As the eastern capital of the Zhou dynasty, it provided a counterbalance to the western capital, Haojing.
周人他是偏处在西北，就是他偏离这个国土的中心。这个东方六国就是殷啊，他是在东方的，他一旦有什么事情，他离太远，所以他呢，到那里以后，你看他离那些地方都比较近，我用各种办法处理，但是我能够临时的这个制约四方。
This craftsman from Xi'an is making a copy of a bronze national treasure, the He. The genuine article is now in the Baoji Bronzeware Museum. It was cast in the 5th year of the reign of King Cheng, when the Duke of Zhou was regent. This copy is almost finished and appears to be an exact replica of the genuine article, but the most valuable part of the object cannot be copied, the inscription on the base. In 122 words across 12 lines, it details the process of building the eastern capital, Luoyi. In the inscription, which is engraved in gold, we find the word Zhongguo, meaning center of the kingdom. For the Duke of Zhou, this is exactly what Luoyi was. In the 5th year of the Regency, the construction of the new city was completed, and the Duke of Zhou resettled the Shang loyalists to live in it, sending with them their sacrificial cauldrons, or ding, symbols of the acceptance of fate. Luoyi officially became the political center of the kingdom. The Duke also called the city Changzhou, signifying that the Zhou kingdom was now fully established. After decades of excavations, this capital from 3,000 years ago has gradually reappeared before the eyes of the world. The first Chinese capital to be planned and constructed on a national level, it is notable for its many structures intended for sacrifice. There was an altar for the worship of heaven, a temple for ancestor worship, and another for worshipping the god of soil and grain. But for the Duke of Zhou, it was the Ming Tang, or Bright Hall, that was the most important. The inauguration rite for the new city was held there. The Ming Tang was built in the shape of the character Ya, with 5 inner rooms surrounded by halls. Outside there were square walls with gates to the east, west, north and south. Decrees were issued from the Ming tongue, and daily audiences with feudal lords were held there. And it was there, as soon as the city was completed, that the Duke and all 1,770 feudal lords attended the first ritual worship of King Wen.
我们可以想象啊，假如说那个时候明堂这个祭祀，周公来主持这样的一个祭典，上千的这个诸侯参加了，他的每一个细节，就是一点点细节都不能错的。这个细节不能错的话，就表示一个人的心要到了最宁静的地步，而且是要听，每一个器官都是集中精力。那么这种事情是成为凝聚这个整个天下各种不同领导者的一个方式。这种典礼在当时周公造成以后呢，它的这个影响力散布到各个不同的阶层。那么这里面体现的是一种人的价值。
Evidently, this act of mass ritual worship was not only about the rite itself. String music was part of the ritual, and the ceremony initiated the feudal lords into the role of music. Meanwhile, the Duke of Zhou was quietly implementing a grand design that would transform the Zhou dynasty and all of China, and have repercussions right up to the present day. This was the Zhou Li, or rites of Zhou, which he created. The Zhou Li set out 300 rules of ritual and 3,000 rules of demeanor. It encompassed all aspects of daily ritual, from the individual to the national level. A system of royal rites was created, governing sacrifices, relationships, guests, the military, and mourning. For each social level above the common people, there were requirements and details of etiquette for every point of one's journey through life. Ethical requirements and codes of conduct were strictly defined and imposed. The Zhou Li codified class differentiation, reinforcing the hierarchical system and guaranteeing the stability of governance and the harmonious development of society. It was designed so that the Zhou dynasty would reign over a kingdom of order, courtesy, and strict social hierarchy. Such was the ideal that the Duke of Zhou hoped to achieve. Peng Lin is a professor at Tsinghua University. His life's work has been to explore and to restore the rites of Zhou. What ultimately is the Zhou Li? After extended research, he believes he knows. This is the Zhou Li form of the Shi Guan Li. Originally the clan coming-of-age ritual, the Duke of Zhou gave it a new humanism. In this solemn and complex rite, the child crosses into adulthood. He will be given greater respect and will bear greater responsibilities. The rite is full of admonitions and recommendations. Do not neglect your external prestige. Carefully nurture your inner virtues. Relatives are present to make you a virtuous adult. May you live long and prosper. Although the form of the rite changed a great deal over time, its emphasis on the adult male's espousal of virtue and his responsibility to family and society have continued unchanged to this day.
礼后面一定要有人来支撑的，有那个他才是有动力的，他才能够有所变化。而且礼必须与时俱进，所以礼以时为大，时很重要。另外，礼就是履，履就走，他一定要经过实践，他不能空谈，一定是知行合一。他知道怎么做和他怎么做，这是合在一起的。他是会和不会，这个没有办法掩饰。所以从这方面说来呢，孔子对周公所讲的那个礼，不就是从一个既有的政治形式来了解它，也把它变成一种人人日用之间必须要经常能够复习经常能够转化的一种重要的价值和资源。
The basic framework of the rites is a set of rules governing those to be cared for and those to be respected, ruled strictly in accordance with the patriarchal clan system. The system of primogeniture had a far-reaching influence. Entrenched by successive dynasties, it has persisted as a bedrock of stability for nearly 3,000 years. The Duke also formulated a complex etiquette for the king and subjects, fathers and sons, brothers, relatives, the noble and the humble. He implemented a ranking system for the nobility. The rights of Zhou advocated strict morality, developing the concepts of honor, care for one's family, respect for the elderly, and love of the young. Moving ancient China away from superstition, witchcraft, and the worship of gods and spirits, they placed it under the sway of etiquette and virtue.
这个转折是经过周公之手，确定。当然，这个道德它是一个抽象的，看不见、摸不着、闻着没气味，它就像空气一样，它是一个抽象的。那怎么拿来治国呢？他就把它具象化，变成礼。这个道德理性在国家制度里面叫礼制。
Music accompanied the rites. Music coming from within produces stillness of mind. Rites coming from without produce elegancies of manner. The Duke of Zhou established a ritual framework for life, as well as a musical system, to give Chinese society lasting stability and fill it with harmonious beauty. The painstaking work of the Duke of Zhou completely overcame the dynasty's former instability. According to the classic of history, in his 7 years as regent, the Duke quelled rebellion in the first year, destroyed Yin in the second, conquered Yan in the third, established feudal states in the fourth, built Changzhou in the fifth, and established rituals and a musical system in the sixth. With his mission accomplished, he then kept his promise to return the reins of power to King Qing.
这个特殊事件里面，确实体现了周公的一些德性，大公无私的德性，一种忠诚的德性，一种对于这个天命的一种承诺了。那么对于这个弱势群体成王基本上就完全在他的掌中嘛，一种尊重了。然后对于礼仪，他自己设立的那些礼仪的这些基本的价值，特别他如果真正是有宗法制度，如果他自己违背的话，那是不得了的事情。所以基本上因为他的这个选择，我相信虽然在历史上是一个特例吧，对于周代的这个国运这样昌荣，能够这样发展下去，它起了极大的作用。
3 years later, the Duke of Zhou succumbed to illness and died. His last words were, "Bury me in Changzhou. I die a good subject of King Qing." Nevertheless, the king buried the Duke with his father and grandfather, indicating that he dared not look upon the Duke as a mere subject. He also permitted the Duke's eldest son, Bo Qin, to use rites and music reserved for kings as a tribute to his father in his feudal state of Lu. The state of Lu always displayed a particular devotion to rites and music. Centuries after the Duke's death, Confucius was born there. Faced with the collapse of the rites during the spring and autumn period, Confucius advocated complying with the rites and self-restraint. The rights he meant were the Duke of Zhou's.
孔子对周的情况他当然更熟悉，因为他比较熟悉，那么他认为如果能够回到东周这是一个欲复文摘，这是好事情。可是他绝对是要有很多的因格，有很多改变。可是有一个呢，我觉得这也是孔子最了不起的地方，就是把德具体落实成礼乐制度以后，也就是一个社会能够安定的一种大敬大法。
周公治理作乐，周公应该是礼乐文明的一个代表，更多的是这个王朝的这个礼仪制度。你看，我们到春秋的时候还看到了春秋的时候很讲礼，非常讲礼那是想继承周人的文化传统包括春秋的时候 吟诗啊，然后这个外交的时候用诗，贵族之间用诗啊，这些东西都是周人的文化传统。
The political and cultural heritage left by the Duke of Zhou provided a wellspring for Confucius and Confucianism. For 1,500 years after Confucius, Chinese culture was referred to as Zhoukong, after the Duke of Zhou and Confucius, clearly demonstrating the Duke's important cultural status. The Duke's personality, charm, and historical influence have spanned thousands of years and have never faded. As the founder of Chinese civilization, he occupies a unique position in the minds of the Chinese people, who have treasured his memory for over 3,000 years. Generations have regarded him as the Yuan Sheng, the great saint. The concept of rule by virtue, grounded in the principles of advocating morality, the prudent use of punishment, and protecting the people, as well as the culture of rites and music that he formulated, have all provided a deep source of life, filtering imperceptibly into every Chinese mind and consciousness.